Nordic Religion by Daniel, Ieshoo and meelis, toma. Introduction. The place of origin of the Nordic people is from the Scandinavian region. This term refers to the zone of Denmark, Sweden and Norway. Many religions, such as the Aboriginal religion, have a reason for connection with the land due to the mythology and settlement in this region. However, the Nordic Society didn't have a reason for settlement in the Scandinavian region because they had no connection with the land. The geographical features of the Scandinavian region had no contribution to their religious beliefs and mainly preferred these areas as it helped growing crops and the soil was fertilized and was close to clean water, which was also good for fishing and for creating boats for sale. One of the reasons which enabled the Nordic Society to settle in the Scandinavian region is due to the rich nature of soil in these areas, as the Nordic people were a farming society and was also their main source of food. Furthermore, they also chose to endorse in the more coastal areas in the Scandinavian region as water was the origins of the universe. The myths and the story of the Nordic Society had many different perspectives that retell how the universe began. It all started on two different regions of land, one called Niflheim, a cold land, and Muspelheim, a hot southern land. On these pieces of land, two beings were formed from melting ice, Yama, an evil frost giant, and Adhamla, a peaceful cow. Whenever Yama would sweat, it would form many different frost giants, and whereas Adhamla licked salty ice. After 3 days her tongue brought forth a man from ice named Bur. Later on Bur had a son named Bor, had 3 sons, Odin, Val and V, which were the 3 first gods of Nordic religion. Yama grew up to become an evil being and later was killed by Odin, Val and V. The 3 brothers followed up the murder by placing his body in the middle of the frozen land, and once his wound leaked onto the land it formed the oceans, and then they struck his flesh to make hills and valleys. They carved his bones into mountain crags and used his teeth to mold them into rocks and pebbles. The roots of his hair formed trees and his flesh formed into soil which later on dwarves emerged from. Yama's brain was thrown up into the sky to make clouds, and his skull was uplifted by 4 dwarfs to form the sky. And later on, Odin informed the frost giant in a form of an eagle to flap his wings to make wind. Finally, stars were set off by Muspelheim through sparks of fire. Ask and Embla were the first man and woman on the universe. Their names relate to an elm tree and an ash tree, which the three brothers confronted along the shore, and they converted them into these 2 beings who became the ancestors of human life. Ancient religions are defined as the early religions of civilization. They are what has formed most religions nowadays. We might not notice certain things that have evolved from ancient religions and are put into practice in our modern religion. An example is how most Christian churches are shaped on Roman temple architecture. Also the symbols of fire and water in the liturgies, also the use of pilgrimages and harvest rituals in other religions. Another relation that is made between ancient religions and modern day religions is that it was part of their everyday lives, not just left for rituals and ceremonies. Principal beliefs. It is divided into 2 main categories, the belief in pagan gods and the belief in other supernatural forces. Pagan gods were separated into 2 families, Asa and Vani, and the supernatural forces were made up of Lavanir, which are described as guardians of the spirit of the land, and Nadavayatar, which is the exemplifies spirit of nature. The Yggdrasil is one of the principal beliefs in the Nordic religion, as it was the center of their Nordic universe. The world tree holds 9 different realms within its branches. Asgard was located at the top of the tree. This is where many gods lived, including Odin, Valhalla, Vanaheim, and Aflaheim, were also located on the highest level of the world tree. These realms were considered as divine. The Norse society believed that Midgard was the middle section of Yggdrasil, which held the human world. Nidvilla, Jotunheim, and Svartalheim was home to dwarfs, giants, and dark elves were also present here. Principal beliefs. Valhalla is the Nordic version of heaven. It is described as a majestic and enormous hall located in Asgard, which is ruled by the god Odin. Half of those who die in combat travel to Valhalla, while the other half go to the goddess Freyja's field Folkvanga. For those that do not die the honorable death in combat are sent to Helmheim, which is their version of the underworld or hell. What happens in Valhalla, Freyjarsfield, Folkvanga, and Helheim is not known by the Nordic Society, but rather many have their own ideology of what happens in each realm depending on how and why you were picked to go to the specific realm. Supernatural powers and deities. The Nordic Society believed that there were two different families of gods, the Vanar and the Asar. They were always at war with each other until they finally formed a truce. After many years of war, the Asar overcome the Vanar, but not through war but rather through surrender. Both families kept their own realm on the highest level of Yggdrasil. The Nordic Society had many gods and goddesses, which all had a major impact on their lives. Each one had a role in how life proceeded. Gods. Loki. The meaning of his name is unknown, but is usually referred to as the trickster god. His reputation was notorious even among the other gods and goddesses. He was the foster son of Odin. Loki helped the Nordic people by greatening their chances of prosperity when catching fish. Loki was the father of monsters. He himself was a frost giant, but was adopted because of his great lively wit. In Nordic mythology, Loki creates trouble when none existed. In doing this, he then resolved conflicts he created and sometimes created a better outcome if he had not intervened with the situation. Loki was competent of both evil and good. He is also linked with Christian images of Satan. Thor means thunder. Thor is Odin's son, the god of thunder, lightning and storm, and is the definition of strength. Thor is the protector of the land of mortals, Midgard. He is always depicted with his hammer, Mjolnir, which creates thunder and lightning whenever it is victorious in battle. Thor was very tall even for a god. Very muscular, he wore gloves and a magical belt called Magjenjara that would double his already colossal strength. Goddesses. Freya means lady. The twin sister of Freya was known as the fertility goddess and was approached by factors like warfare, love affairs, beauty, prophecy, and the arts. Freya had many jewels of nature. She owned a chariot drawn by cats and a coat which bared falcon feather, which empowered her to be able to fly. The greatest of her jewels was her enchanted necklace, which once worn by her brought forth great beauty among her. The Valkyries. These goddesses were foster daughters of Odin. They lived in Valhalla and were cupbearers for the spirits of fallen warriors. The Valkyries were also a defense for their leader goddess Freya. Odin. Odin's name came from the words Master of Ecstasy. Was seen as the highest and holiest of the Nordic gods. He was the god of victory, wisdom, associated with war, poetry, prophecy, and hunting, sometimes referred to as All-Father. He was the ruler of the realm of Asgard. Odin is described as a middle-aged man with long curly hair and a beard. He was always depicted with his spear, Jungna. The spear never misses its target. Only one of Odin's eyes are functional, as he traded his other eye in order to achieve gift of infinite knowledge. Rituals. Sacred spaces. The Nordic religion didn't have sacred spaces, rather they had specific areas that came from nature, such as meadows, swamps, lakes, rocks, and hillocks. These places were important because they were used to perform sacrifices called blots. Blots was a ritual that accompanied the boiling of animals like pigs and horses in large boiling pots. The blood was drained from these animals, was later taken and sprinkled over the sacred statues of their gods because they believed that the blood has supernatural powers. Finally, the meat that was shared between the tribe to be eaten. Worshipping of the gods was not done in any specific form, but rather the Nordic society looked upon their gods through statues. Principal rituals. The Norse society did not consist of priests or popes, rather they had head chiefs who led the sacrifices and worships that were made. It is known that the Nordic people also practiced human sacrifice for a divine and holy life. It is said that Odin sacrificed himself on the world tree to earn himself divine wisdom. It's also said that King Arn gave away 9 of his sons to his god Odin in exchange for a longer life. Every 9 years there was a festival at the great temple in Sweden, during which a sacrifice was made to the gods, where things like dogs and horses and even humans were put down to attain a holy and long living life in the future. The Nordic society also had rituals for burial. They would place the body of the warrior with a slave lady because they believed that in the afterlife they would become husband and wife. The chief's funeral would consist of placing him in a boat with all his custody and setting it off in the ocean. Burial and the afterlife. The Nordic society believes that the body has different parts. Once the body dies, they believe that the body gets detached and taken to different states, either the underworld or Valhalla. They regard that a part of the body gets taken to the underworld, where it retains the same personality and looks as its old self, and this is referred as an ancestor to them and can come in contact at any time. To the Nordic society, the Hammenja, which is the state where the individual is reborn onto the universe, is another form, especially when they are given the same name. There are 2 types of burial: cremation and inhumation, meaning either they were burned or buried. They were also placed in a boat, wagon, or even horses, usually a form of transportation that would lead them to the afterlife. Their belongings were also placed with them. Cremation was a more common practice of burial during the Viking Age. Religion and society. The Nordic society consisted in different parts of the universe, including Alfheim, world of the elves; Asgard, world of the Asar; Jotunheim, world of the giants and frost giants; Midgard, home of mankind; Muspelheim, world of fire and fire giant, home of the giant Surt; Nidavla, home of the dwarves; Niflheim, world of the ice and that of the dead, which is also known as Hell; Svartalfheim, world of black elves; Vanheim, home of the Vanir. Search for meaning. The Nordic society and religion lived a simple life. They did whatever they wanted to do if it benefited them. All capable men and women were encouraged to fight in war in order to die an honorable death, to get into Valhalla and Folkvanger, the realm of the gods, the Nordic version of heaven. These people were called the Vikings. They raided and attacked other societies to benefit their own with booty, loot, and even monetary items. Overall, this society and religion is based purely on self-enrichment, and one can do whatever it takes in order to benefit themselves without negatively impacting anyone else in the